I almost died on the operating table, yet my family remained at my sister's engagement party. Months later, when they came begging for help, I was already gone. Hook. I remember the hospital wristband digging into my skin, but the deepest scar isn't visible. It's the one carved into my soul the day I realized my own family, my parents and sister, chose a lavish party, a cake cutting over my life. I nearly died and they didn't even notice. How did it come to this? Story. My name is Julia, and my story, the one that changed everything, began 4 months before that horrific Thursday. I was a marketing director in Boston, drowning in long hours and constant pressure. So, when my stomach started acting up, I just blamed the endless coffee and lack of sleep. Stress, I told myself. The irony wasn't lost on me that I worked for a company that built diagnostic technology, yet I couldn't diagnose my own rapidly worsening health. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Sophie, was living in her own perfect world. Harvard grad, big shot finance job in Manhattan, and newly engaged to James, a guy whose family practically owned half of Connecticut. My parents, John and Catherine Matthews, had spent 7 months planning Sophie's engagement gala. It wasn't just a party, it was a royal event. Every Sunday dinner at their Cambridge home became a battleground of centerpiece arrangements and wine choices. "Julia, you're definitely coming," my mother would declare, not asking, just stating. "Sophie is looking forward to seeing you." I'd just nod, moving food around my plate, my stomach clenching. "Of course," I'd say, forcing a smile. I wouldn't miss it. The gala was set for December 1st. My body, it turns out, had already booked my emergency surgery for the exact same night. I just didn't know it yet. By October, the ache had become a monster. I'd seen my doctor twice. The first time, she waved it off as stress, prescribing antacids. The second time, she ordered an ultrasound. Something was wrong with my appendix, but it wasn't clear. She referred me to a specialist, but the earliest appointment was a month away. "If the pain gets unbearable, go to the ER," she warned. "Don't wait." I nodded, grabbed my meds, and went straight back to work. Looking back, it feels utterly idiotic, but when you're caught in it, everything seems manageable. I was popping ibuprofen like candy, attending meetings, answering emails, and pretending everything was normal. Admitting otherwise felt like admitting weakness. Ethan, my boyfriend of 3 years, who lived with me in my Back Bay apartment, noticed I wasn't eating. He was worried enough to tell me, "You need to push harder for answers, Julia." But Ethan, an architect, had left for a project in Seattle the week before the gala. We talked on the phone, and I downplayed how truly awful I felt. I just didn't want him to worry from 2,500 miles away. The morning of December 1st started like a nightmare. I woke at 5 a.m., spent 25 minutes trying not to puke, the pain so acute it made my vision swim. Despite the freezing December air, I was drenched in sweat. I called in sick, something I almost never did, and spent the day curled on my sofa, a heating pad my only comfort. Around 3 p.m., my phone rang. My mother. "Julia, please tell me you're getting ready," she demanded, no greeting. The gala starts at 7, and you know how your sister reacts when people are late. My voice was a raw whisper. "Mom, I really don't feel well. I think I might have to miss tonight." The silence on the other end was so long I thought the call had dropped. Then her voice, cold as ice. "You're joking." "Mom, I'm in a lot of pain. My stomach problems are worse." "You've always been overly theatrical about being sick," she sneered, her words slicing through the phone. She reminded me of high school mono that was just a cold, a broken ankle that was merely a sprain. "Mom, this is different." "It's always different with you, Julia," she sighed, that irritated sound I knew so well. "Take some Tylenol. Get yourself together. Your sister needs you there. We all do. Don't disgrace us by being the only family member who doesn't show." The guilt hit me, just as she intended. My mother knew exactly which buttons to push, and "don't embarrass the family" was her favorite. "I'll try," I whispered. "You will do more than try. Be there by 6:30. We need photographs." She hung up before I could respond. I sat there, clutching my phone, waves of agony pulsing through my abdomen. Was she right? Was I being dramatic? Maybe I could just push through for a few hours. Sophie was my only sibling. Despite our wildly different lives, despite my parents' clear favoritism, she was still my sister. By 6 p.m., I convinced myself. I dressed in the cocktail dress I'd bought for the gala, carefully applied makeup to hide my ghostly pale face, and called a rideshare. Every bump in the road sent new spikes of torment through me. I just breathed through it. The venue was stunning. Thousands of fairy lights transformed the botanical garden greenhouse into something out of a dream. Sophie looked radiant in her champagne gown, James beaming beside her. My parents held court near the entrance, welcoming guests with practiced elegance. "Julia, finally!" my father boomed when he saw me. "We thought you'd skip your own sister's party." My mother air-kissed my cheeks. "I told you she'd come," she said then, "though you do look pale, sweetheart. Use the restroom before pictures." I made it through the formal family portraits, leaning against a pillar between shots. I made it through the first hour of the gala, nursing a ginger ale, the thought of food making me nauseous. I even made it through my mother introducing me to dozens of James's relatives, their names instantly forgotten as the pain started to blot out everything else. Around 9 p.m., I found my mother near the bar. "Mom, I need to go home. Something is horribly wrong." She looked at me, annoyance barely concealed. "Julia, we haven't even finished the toast yet. Can you please hold on for another hour?" "I don't think I can. The agony is worsening." "Then sit somewhere quiet. There's a bench in the orchid room. But you absolutely cannot leave until Sophie and James have cut the cake. It would destroy her." She turned away, dismissing me with a wave, already greeting someone else. The orchid room was blessedly vacant and cool. I sat on the bench, leaning forward. It hurt less that way. Through the glass walls, I watched the party continue. The orchestra played. Laughter drifted. Sophie shone at the center of it all. Around 9:15, the discomfort exploded. 1 second, I was breathing through the pains. The next, something ripped inside me, turning the entire world white with agony. I tried to stand, then instantly fell. I don't remember much after that. Fragments return sometimes, usually at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. The icy chill of the tile floor on my cheek. Someone screaming for help. The metallic taste of copper in my mouth as I was loaded onto a stretcher. The greenhouse roof spinning above me as they wheeled me through the stunned crowd. Later, much later, one of Sophie's friends described the scene. I was lying on the orchid room floor in a pool of blood, my champagne dress now scarlet as paramedics worked frantically to stabilize me. The entire event had ground to a halt. Guests gawked. Someone had called 911, and my parents, they were outraged. This friend, still shocked by their reaction years later, remembered my mother saying, clear as day, "Could she really not have held on until after the cake cutting?" I was rushed to Massachusetts General. Doctors found my appendix hadn't just ruptured, it had been slowly leaking for days, filling my abdomen with infection and internal bleeding. Emergency surgery was my only hope. My situation was so dire, the surgical team briefly debated if it was already too late. The procedure lasted 5 hours. I flatlined twice on the table. The surgeon later told Ethan, who'd boarded the first flight back from Seattle, that I was minutes from death, ravaged by septic shock and massive blood loss. My family was still at the botanical gardens. The gala continued. After the ambulance left, my parents announced I'd had a medical episode but was being treated. Then they moved on with the program. The toast was made. The cake was sliced. The orchestra played until midnight. That night, no one from my family visited the hospital. I awoke 40 hours later in the ICU, intubated, hooked up to so many machines I looked like something from a sci-fi movie. Ethan was there, asleep in the recliner beside me. When I opened my eyes, he called for the nurse, held my hand while I tried to piece together what had happened. My parents visited on the third day. I'd been moved to a regular room, still in agony, pumped full of 4 different antibiotics. They arrived at 3 p.m., my mother clutching a small, generic bouquet of flowers. "Julia, thank God you're all right," she exclaimed, placing the flowers on a ledge. "You gave us quite a scare." My father stood awkwardly by the door, the picture of discomfort when faced with illness. "The doctor says you'll make a full recovery." My head was still fuzzy from the pain meds, but clear enough to hear the utter lack of genuine care in their voices. "You didn't come," I croaked, my throat raw from the breathing tube. "I nearly died, and you didn't come. The doctor informed us you were in surgery, and there was nothing we could do," my mother replied, needlessly rearranging the flowers. It seemed more feasible to stay with Sophie. She was quite upset about what transpired. "I'm devastated that I destroyed her party," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. My mother's gaze hardened. "That is unjust. Your sister was truly concerned. But certainly, Julia, your timing was quite poor. Do you have any idea how much the gala cost? How many significant people were present?" James's parents were appalled by the pandemonium. Something inside me fractured. Something that had probably been breaking for years, now splitting entirely. "I nearly died." "But you didn't," my father interjected, his tone implying we should all just be grateful and move on. "The doctor rescued you. Everything turned out great. There's no need to be overly theatrical about it." Melodramatic. There was that word again. "I need you to leave," I murmured, my voice trembling. "Julia, don't be childish," my mother began, but I cut her off. "Yes, both of you." They exchanged glances. My mother's jaw tightened. "Fine. Come back when you're feeling more sensible. Clearly, the drugs are affecting your emotions." After they left, I sobbed, the first time since I'd woken up. Ethan held me, careful not to jostle any of my tubes or wires, and I cried into his shoulder until exhaustion pulled me under. For days after my surgery, a text came from Sophie. "Mom said you're awake. Glad you're okay. Sorry the timing of everything was so awful. Sorry I nearly died? No. Sorry she hadn't visited? No. Sorry about the timing." As if my near-death experience was just an inconvenient scheduling conflict. I stared at that text for a long time before deleting it without a response. Megan, my best friend from college, flew in from New York twice to see me. I was in the hospital for 9 days, and Ethan never left my side unless it was to shower or grab some sleep at home. Coworkers sent cards and flowers. My parents never returned. Sophie never visited. On the day I was discharged, my mother called while Ethan was helping me into actual clothes. "Your father, and I think you owe Sophie an apology," she announced, and I nearly dropped the phone. "Excuse me." Her engagement gala was supposed to be the highlight of her year, Julia, but the entire evening ended up being about you and your medical problems. Several guests left early, and the photographer couldn't get all the images Sophie wanted because of the ambulance and police cars outside. "I was dying, Mom, and I apologize for interrupting the party." You've always had to make everything about you, even as a child. You couldn't stand it when Sophie got attention. James's mother was asking invasive questions about our family's health history, which was embarrassing. The medicine fog had finally lifted enough for me to understand exactly what she was saying and not saying. "You're correct," I said, my voice flat. "And I apologize for nearly dying at an inconvenient moment. It won't happen again." "That's more like it. I'm delighted you're finally being rational. We'll invite you for supper after you've recovered, and we can all get over this unpleasantness." "Sure, Mom. I'll let you know when I'm feeling up to it." I hung up and looked at Ethan. He was standing there, my shoes in his hands, absolute fury etched on his face. "Did she really just—" he started, but I nodded. "I need you to drive me home." We can talk about it later. Ethan helped me up the stairs, settled me on the couch with pillows and blankets, made sure my medications and water were within reach, then sat beside me, careful not to jostle me. "What are you going to do?" he asked. I'd been thinking about that question since my parents' hospital visit, but that phone call had crystallized something in my mind. "I'm going to let them go." "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm done. With my parents, with Sophie, with everything. They've shown me exactly where I rank in their priorities, and I'm tired of pretending it doesn't matter." Ethan squeezed my hand. "I support whatever you decide. But are you certain? These are permanent decisions." "They chose permanency when they stayed at that party when I was dying," I told him, my voice steady. "I'm only respecting their choice." The plan gradually formed over the next 2 weeks as I healed. I wasn't out to hurt anyone or exact some dramatic vengeance. Instead, I decided to remove myself from their lives as cleanly and completely as possible, like removing a tumor. I started small, ignoring my mother's texts and calls. When she complained to my father, who then called me, I answered once to tell him I was busy with recovery and would contact him when I was ready. For weeks post-surgery, Ethan and I went to Colorado to celebrate Thanksgiving with his parents, who had shown more genuine concern for my health in one phone call than my own family had shown throughout the entire ordeal. I ignored my mother's increasingly irritated messages, demanding to know where I was. Christmas was the real test. My family had a tradition of gathering at my parents' house on Christmas Eve, a formal affair sacred in the Matthews household. My mother called 2 weeks before to confirm my attendance. I let it go to voicemail. Then I blocked her number, along with my father's, Sophie's, and the handful of relatives who had started calling on my mother's behalf, asking why I was being so difficult. The silence was immediate and complete. No calls, no texts, no emails. I had made myself unreachable. Ethan asked several times if I was sure. I was. For the first time in my adult life, I felt light without the constant weight of their expectations and disappointments pressing down on me. In January, I changed my phone number. I hadn't given the new one to any family members. In February, I moved to a different apartment in Brooklyn, an address no one knew. I blocked them on social media. I changed my emergency contact information at work and with my doctors. By March, I'd effectively vanished from my family's life. Megan, who occasionally ran into old family friends, told me my parents were initially confused, then annoyed and finally bewildered by my absence. Apparently, they'd driven to my old apartment, only to be told by the landlord I'd moved and left no forwarding address. "They seem to think you've had some kind of breakdown," Megan told me over coffee. "Your mom was asking if I knew where you were, if you were okay, and she seemed to be worried about how it looked that her daughter had disappeared." "She's not worried about me," I corrected her, a wry smile on my face. Megan looked at me carefully. "You really think you can keep this up forever?" "I don't know about forever," I admitted, "but I can keep it up as long as I need to." The fact was, I felt better than I had in years. My work improved, no longer distracted by family drama. My relationship with Ethan deepened, because I wasn't using him as an emotional shield against my parents' criticism. I started running again, rebuilding my strength. I even picked up painting, a passion from college that my mother had dismissed as a waste of time. 9 months passed like that. Then, in late July at a conference in New York, I ran into one of James's cousins in a hotel elevator. She recognized me immediately and launched into a sympathetic speech about how awful everything must be with my father and how she hoped he'd recover quickly. After 9 months of peace, autonomy, and freedom from constant judgment, I was stunned. My father had a heart attack. I stood there, trying to process her words. "I'm sorry, what happened to my father?" Her face fell. "Oh God, you don't know? I assumed your family must have informed you." "Informed me what?" "Your father had a heart attack 3 days ago and is at Mount Auburn Hospital. I just assumed you'd be there, or that someone would have called you." Days later, after calling me melodramatic and suggesting I'd ruined your party on purpose. I picked up my water glass, just to have something to do with my hands. You want to know what's wrong with me? Nothing. For the first time in my life, nothing is wrong with me. I'm well and happy, and I have people around me who truly care whether I live or die. We care. Sophie insisted, but the words sounded hollow. You worry about how my absence affects you. That's not the same thing. So what? You're just never going to speak to us again? You're going to pretend you don't have a family. I'm not pretending anything. I'm simply choosing not to maintain relationships with people who've demonstrated that I don't matter to them, unless I play the role they want me to play. Sophie stood there for another moment, her mouth opening and closing, as if she wanted to say something else but couldn't find the words. Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Are you okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. I really am. The final piece came 3 months later, in November, almost exactly a year after the gala. I was at my apartment when someone buzzed from the lobby. The doorman called up, telling me Catherine Matthews was there and wanted to see me. I almost told him to send her away, but something in his voice, a note of concern, made me pause. Is she all right? He asked. She seems quite distressed. She's been crying. I told him to send her up. I waited by my door, arms crossed, defenses fully raised. My mother looked smaller than I remembered, older. Her lipstick was smeared from weeping, and she was gripping her purse like a lifeline. Julia! Her voice cracked on my name. Please, can we talk? I let her in, but didn't offer a seat. We stood in my entrance, 2 feet apart, but worlds away. Mom, what's wrong? It's your father. He had another episode yesterday. They don't think he has much time. His heart is failing. The shock was sudden and disorienting. I assumed he'd recovered. The article said he was okay. He wasn't managing his medicine properly. He resumed working too many hours. I stood there, watching her cry, trying to find any emotion in what she'd just told me. His heart was weakening. She started crying in earnest. Julia, please. He's begging for you. He wants to see you before. That night when I was dying, why didn't you come to the hospital? My mother wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara even more. I was filled with sadness, grief, and anger for my father that he had allowed his health to deteriorate. But the well from which I had drawn my entire life had run dry. Julia, your father is dying. And I nearly died while you ate cake and posed for photos. So I'll ask again, why didn't you come? She looked genuinely confused, as if she couldn't understand why I was bringing up something so obviously ancient and irrelevant. The doctor said you were in surgery and there was nothing we could have done. You could have been there when I woke up. You could have canceled the rest of the party. You could have acted as if you cared, even a little bit, that your daughter might not survive the night. We did care, but Sophie also needed us and the gala was more important than me, I finished for her. As you've made abundantly clear. My mother's face hardened, some of her usual steel returning. You've always been jealous of your sister, and even now, you can't let go of that petty resentment long enough to be there for your dying father. I'm not jealous of Sophie. I'm angry that my parents valued her party over my life. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. And the worst part is, you still don't believe you did anything wrong. Even now, you're asking me to drop everything and come to Dad's bedside. And you can't understand why I might hesitate after you couldn't do the same for me. That's different. How? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You survived. By chance? The surgeon told Ethan it could have gone either way. I survived despite your absence, not because of anything you did. So this is it. My mother's voice turned bitter. You're going to let your father die without saying goodbye because you have a grudge against a party? It wasn't about the party, Mom. It was never about the party. It was about the fact that when I needed you the most, you chose something else, someone else. And then you had the audacity to tell me I was being melodramatic and that I owed Sophie an apology. I was upset, and the entire evening had been ruined. My mother straightened her shoulders, her tears drying as her natural imperious nature reasserted itself. It didn't matter that I'd nearly died, that I'd been bleeding internally for days, or that you'd called me dramatic when I said I couldn't come. What mattered was that your plans had been disrupted. You've decided we're the villains in your story, and nothing I say will change that. But your father loves you, Julia, and he's dying. Can you really live with yourself if you don't say goodbye? I considered that question for a long time. The answer surprised me with its clarity. Yes, I said. I can, because I already said goodbye when I woke up in the ICU and realized none of you cared enough to be there. Anything else would be repeating myself. You'll regret this, maybe, but it'll be my sorrow, not yours. My mother departed without another word. I watched from my window as she got into her car and drove away, waiting for the guilt or grief to hit me. It never did. My father died 3 days later. I read the obituary in the Boston Globe, sitting at my kitchen table, drinking coffee, feeling completely disconnected from the entire narrative. Ethan was worried about me. Are you sure you're okay? It's normal to have complicated feelings about this. I'm sure, I told him. I'm sad that he's gone, but I'm sad the way I'd feel about any person dying, not about losing my father. I looked up at him. Does that make me a bad person? No, he said, pulling me into a hug. Sophie got my new phone number, probably from a mutual contact, and left a voicemail after the funeral. She was sobbing, calling me heartless and cruel, accusing me of killing our father with my selfishness by not being there when he needed me most. I erased the message without answering. The months that followed were quiet. I poured myself into work, got engaged to Ethan that spring, and began planning a modest wedding for just close friends. I was creating a life that left no room for the family I'd been born into. A year after my father's death, nearly a year and a half after the gala, I was walking through Boston Common when I saw my mother, sitting on a bench, alone, feeding pigeons from a bag of breadcrumbs. She looked so diminished, I almost walked past without recognizing her. Most people were polite enough not to press for details, so I developed a simple response. We're not in contact. But this time I felt compelled to approach. I sat alongside her, keeping a careful distance. How are you? I asked. She looked up, our eyes meeting. I saw her register who I was, her face going through a dozen micro-expressions before settling on something that looked like resignation. I'm okay. Her voice was quiet, lacking its usual sharp edges. How are you? I'm well. I got engaged. Congratulations, she said automatically without inflection. To Ethan. Yes. We sat in silence for a while, watching the pigeons. Your sister got married last month, my mother finally said. Small ceremony, just family. What's left of it? I hope she's happy. She is. James treats her well. Another pause. She occasionally asks about you. Does she? She feels bad about what happened. About everything. She should. My mother turned to look at me then. Really? Look at me. Do you hate us? The question hung in the air. I considered lying, saying something diplomatic, but settled on the truth. No, I don't hate you. I just don't need you anymore. That's worse somehow. She laughed, but it sounded more like a sob. Hate would at least mean we still mattered to you. You had a choice, Mom. Every single day. You had a choice about how to treat me, prioritize me, and show up for me. And every single time, you chose something else, someone else. Eventually, I stopped waiting for you to choose me. I chose you because I'm your mother, and choosing me would have meant acting like it. She crumpled the empty bread bag in her hands. Your father had asked for you before he died. Did you know that? Not just that night when I came to your apartment, but in the hospital in those final hours. He kept saying your name. The information landed without impact. I'm sorry, he died wanting something I couldn't give him. But he taught me that lesson himself. People don't always get what they want, especially if they've spent years making it clear that someone doesn't matter to them. We never said you didn't matter. You didn't have to say it, Mom. You showed me, over and over again. The gala was just the last confirmation of something I'd known my whole life. I don't know how to mend this. You can't. That's what I've been trying to tell you. There's nothing to fix because I'm not broken. I'm just done. So this is permanent. You're never coming back. I stood up, brushing invisible crumbs from my jeans. I'm not coming back because I was never really there to begin with. You were so busy polishing Sophie into the perfect daughter that you never noticed I'd left. Julia, I hope you have a good life. Mom, I genuinely meant that. I hope Sophie's marriage is happy and you get grandchildren and all the things you wanted. I just won't be a part of it. I walked away then, leaving her on that bench. And I hadn't looked back. That was 4 years ago. I'm 35 now. I married Ethan in a beautiful ceremony at a vineyard in Napa Valley, surrounded by 50 of our closest friends. We bought a house in Newton. I became a partner at my firm last year, and we're talking about starting a family. My life is full, rich, and completely separate from the people who raised me. But sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. These thoughts usually come late at night when Ethan is asleep beside me, and I'm scrolling through my phone, seeing other people's family photos, and feeling that phantom ache where something used to be. But then I remember the hospital bracelet. I remember the cold of the operating table. I remember waking up and realizing that the people who were supposed to love me the most in the world had chosen a party over my life. And I remember that choosing myself was not a form of vengeance, punishment, or even a choice at all. It was survival. Last week, I received a letter forwarded through my old law school address. It was from Sophie, written in her precise handwriting on expensive stationery. She wanted me to know she was pregnant, due in January. She said she'd been thinking about family and what it means, and how she wished things were different between us. She did not apologize, not for the gala, not for the text about timing, not for anything. She just said she hoped that the baby could be a fresh start for all of us. I read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer with other artifacts from my old life, like my hospital discharge papers, my father's obituary, and the block numbers list that used to be my family contacts. Maybe someday I'll feel differently. In the years since I nearly died, I've learned you can't force people to care about you or make them prioritize you. Maybe someday the anger will subside, and I'll be able to meet my niece or nephew, but most likely not. You can't persuade them that you're important when they've already decided you don't matter. What you can do is accept who they are and what they're capable of giving you, and then decide if that's enough. For me, it wasn't. So I chose silence, absence, and removing myself from an equation where I was always going to be the variable that didn't count. Ethan asked me the other night if I ever regretted ghosting them. We were cooking dinner, moving around our kitchen in that synchronized way of people who've learned each other's rhythms. He asked casually, as if he'd been thinking about it for a while, "Do you ever wish you'd given them another chance? After your father died, when your mother contacted you, or now with Sophie's baby?" I considered it, chopping vegetables for the salad. No, because another chance implies they deserved a first chance and squandered it. But they had hundreds of opportunities. Every day of my upbringing, every moment they decided to neglect me, favor Sophie, or make me feel like I was asking for too much by simply existing. The gala wasn't the beginning, Ethan. It was just the conclusion. You don't believe people can change? I believe they can, but I'm not sure my family wanted to. They wanted me to go back to accepting whatever scraps they were willing to offer and being grateful for it. I set down the knife and turned to face him. I'm happier now than I've ever been. Doesn't that tell you something? He drew me into a hug, careful, and gentle, just like he'd been that day in the ICU. It tells me you made the right choice. And most days, I absolutely believe that. But there are still moments when I see a mother and daughter shopping together and laughing, or I watch a family reunion video, or I hear someone casually mention Sunday dinner at their parents' house, and I feel the loss of something I never really had, but always wanted. I mourn for the family I should have had, the parents who would have rushed to the hospital and held my hand through the fear, the sister who would have canceled her party to be with me. My body, against all odds, proved its ability to survive trauma and heal itself, even when the damage appeared catastrophic. I like to think I've done the same thing emotionally. The trauma of being unloved by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally nearly destroyed me. But I cut out the infected parts, gave myself time to heal, and rebuilt something stronger in its place. My phone has been silent for 4 years. No calls from blocked numbers. No letters except Sophie's pregnancy announcement. No surprise visits or dramatic confrontations. They finally realized that I meant what I said, that I wasn't bluffing, throwing a tantrum, or waiting for them to grovel enough to earn my forgiveness. I was simply done. Here's the thing about being done. It's not dramatic. It's not vengeance. It's not even particularly satisfying in the way you might expect. It's just peace. I don't lie awake at night fantasizing about scenarios in which they finally understand what they did to me. I don't fantasize about them suffering the same way I did, learning through their own pain what it's like to be abandoned when you need someone the most. I suppose my father's heart attack gave them a taste of that. My mother reaching out to me in desperation, my phone remaining silent, her having to accept the fact that I wasn't coming no matter how much she needed me to. But I didn't orchestrate it. I didn't plan it. And I didn't even feel particularly vindicated when I found out about it later. I just felt nothing. And maybe that's the true revenge, if you want to call it that. I've grown entirely apathetic to whether my family suffers or flourishes, struggles or succeeds, lives or dies. I don't hate them enough to hurt them, but neither do I love them enough to rescue them. When I get pregnant and hold my child for the first time, I know I'll think about my parents, how they failed me, and how I'll work every day not to fail my own children. They were strangers who happened to share my DNA and last name in my childhood home, but strangers nonetheless. Ethan and I are trying for a baby now. I'll teach my children that they matter, that their pain is real and valid, that when they say they're hurting, I'll believe them instead of dismissing them as dramatic, that no party, event, or social obligation will ever be more important than their well-being. And I'll do all of this without ever meeting their grandparents on my side. Perhaps this makes me cruel. In the future, my children may wonder why they don't have grandparents on my side. And I'll have to explain that sometimes love isn't enough, that sometimes biology doesn't trump boundaries, and that the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who hurt you. But I believe they'll understand, because I'll raise them in a home where understanding comes naturally, where their feelings are respected, and where they never have to choose between being heard and being loved. The other day, I was cleaning out my closet and discovered the champagne-colored dress I'd worn to the gala, the one that had been ruined with blood. I'd kept it for some reason, shoved in the back of a garment bag and forgotten about it, until my hand landed on the familiar fabric. I pulled it out and looked at it for a long time. The stains had set permanently, dark, rust-colored patches across the silk. It was unwearable, unsalvageable. I threw it in the trash without hesitation. Some things can't be cleaned, repaired, or made beautiful again. Some damage is too fundamental, too deep, and the only option is to let it go and move on to something new. That dress isn't a metaphor, but maybe it is. Either way, it's gone. And I'm still here. I'm still here, living a life that my family will never see, creating a future they will never witness, becoming a person they will never truly know. And I'm fine with that. In fact, I'm happy, because choosing myself gave me the freedom to become someone I actually enjoy. So no, I don't feel guilty. I don't lie awake at night, wondering if I should have tried harder, forgiven more readily, or given them the chances they never deserved. I simply move on. My life is proof that you can not only survive, but even thrive when you are unloved by your family. They wanted me to need them, and they expected me to eventually miss them enough to forget what had happened. But you can construct something greater from the debris of shattered relationships and unmet expectations. All you have to do is be willing to let go. I let go 4 years ago on an operating table when I flatlined twice and no one from my family noticed. And I've been free ever since. Call to action. This journey taught me so much about boundaries and self-worth. I'm curious, have you ever had to make a drastic choice to protect your own peace, even if it meant letting go of someone you thought you loved? How did you navigate that, and what did you learn? Tell me what you think in the comments below.